Welcome back everyone. In this video we will learn if Jesus ever went to India and how the account of Jesus in India is nothing but a modern gospel forgery, lies and deception. Questions still arise about the supposedly lost years or missing years of Jesus, the 18 years gap of time between when he was 12 and 30, and if Jesus went to India as a child and learned from the Hindu gurus or teachers. Many New Agers have claimed that Jesus traveled to India as a child to learn from the Brahmin or Hindu gurus. He allegedly later went to Israel and performed miracles, learned from these gurus, and taught doctrines which he derived from them. Such an idea is preposterous. First, Jesus' teaching about God was not pantheistic, that is, all is God, as was that of the gurus of India. Jesus never cited the Hindu Vedas or taught karma or reincarnation, but always quoted the Jewish Old Testament, which proclaims the monotheistic God of Judaism. Also, when we study the Bible thoroughly, we can see that Jesus clearly declared or revealed that he is God himself in human form. The reason why Jesus was crucified was because he claimed to be equal to God. The Gospel writers and the authors of the epistles believed Jesus is God, as claimed by him and stated in the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament Bible. The four canonical Gospels show us clearly that Jesus never went anywhere but remained in Israel. The Gospels do not give us much information about Jesus' childhood, except for the birth of Jesus recorded by the Apostles Matthew and Luke, Jesus' dedication in the temple and his encounters with Simeon and Anna, and the incident when Jesus at age 12 is separated from his parents Joseph and Mary and them finding him in the temple discussing matters with the teachers. However, the Gospel of Luke sums up Jesus' childhood and adolescent years in Luke 2:40 and Luke 2:52. In Luke 2:22-24, we see that Jesus was presented in the temple for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, and then Luke 2:40 sums up his childhood before age 12. Luke 2:40, and the child grew and became strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. In Luke 2:41-51, we see 12-year-old boy Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem listening to the teachers and asking them questions. And after this incident, Luke sums up Jesus' adolescent years in Luke 2:52. Luke 2:52, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Clearly, Luke 2:52 summarizes Jesus' life from age 12, stating that he grew in wisdom and stature, that is, height and reputation, and was favored by God and people. Jesus, of course, was both God and man. As God, he was omniscient or all-knowing and all-wise, so he could never grow in wisdom from the divine perspective. However, in his humanity, he probably gained wisdom as did the other Jewish boys by studying the Old Testament scripture and listening to the wisdom of the elders. Jesus was known in his community as a carpenter and a carpenter's son. It was customary among the Jews for fathers to teach their sons a trade. Therefore, Joseph would have taught Jesus the trade of carpentry as Jesus grew up in the Palestine area. The Gospels of Matthew and Mark state this fact clearly. Matthew 13:54-57, when he had come to his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And his brothers James, Jose, Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this man get all these things?" So they were offended at him. Also, Luke 4:16 is a key text to refute the idea that Jesus went to India. Luke 4:16, so he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. Luke's Gospel clearly states that Jesus was brought up in Nazareth and his custom was to read the scripture in the synagogue. We see Jesus coming to his hometown Nazareth and teaching in the synagogue on the Sabbath as a grown man. When the people heard him, they were astonished at his wisdom and wondered how he became so powerful in both word and works. Jesus left Nazareth as a carpenter and came back as a rabbi, complete with a group of disciples, and was rejected there. Luke also describes the natives' shocking response to Jesus' initial messianic teachings, as they knew Jesus as a carpenter's son. Luke 4:22. So all bore witness to him, and marveled at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. And they said, Is this not Joseph's son? After Jesus finished reading on this occasion, Luke says that all were speaking well of him and wondered at the gracious words which were falling from his lips, and that they were asking if Jesus is the same Jesus, son of Joseph. Clearly, all those in the synagogue recognized Jesus as a local resident. Jesus was brought up in Nazareth, not in India, and his custom was to visit the synagogue, not Hindu temples. It is also noteworthy that Jesus read from the Old Testament scripture. The Old Testament, for which Jesus often displayed reverence, warns about staying away from other gods and religious systems, which would include Hinduism. The Old Testament clearly distinguishes the creation from the Creator, unlike Eastern pantheism or Hinduism, and teaches the need for redemption, not enlightenment. Also, Jesus always taught that He is the only way to heaven and claimed to be God. John 14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus meant that it is only through faith in Him that we have access to the Father in heaven, and the life is eternal for all who believe. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, grew up in Nazareth, hence is called Jesus of Nazareth, and engaged in itinerant ministry throughout Galilee, Judea, and places between them, and was executed in Judea just outside Jerusalem. Except for a brief stay in Egypt with his parents as a baby, all of Jesus' mortal life have taken place within a radius of roughly 100 miles of the place of his birth. Second, the apocryphal account that Jesus traveled to India as a child to study with the Hindus or Brahmins is a relatively modern one. The mysterious account has been exposed as a fabrication perpetrated by a Russian war correspondent named Nicholas Notovich. He published a book called La Vie Icône de Jesus Christ in France in 1894. Almost immediately, it was widely disseminated and translated. The most widely circulated modern forgery appeared as The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ in English in 1926, but was already exposed as a fraud more than 30 years earlier. The book says that Jesus went to India during his formative teen years, that is, the last years before his public ministry, and there learned the secrets of the East. Notovich describes his discovery of Prophet Isa from the Lamas of Tibet while traveling in India and Kashmir in 1887, and further in Ladakh on the border of India and Tibet to the famous Tibetan Buddhist monastery of Hemis. There he supposedly heard further stories and was told that the written records of the life of Isa still survived. Notovich incidentally went back to the monastery after breaking his leg in an accident. He inquired more about Issa and took notes, while the abbot at the monastery read out stories of Issa from Tibetan volumes with the help of a translator. The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ is the published edition of the careful notes that Notovich allegedly took. According to the account, when Jesus was 13, he joined a merchant caravan to go to India to study their sacred laws. Jesus supposedly spent 6 years with the Brahmins or Hindus learning their holy books, the Vedas. But Jesus was totally disenchanted with the Indian caste system and openly began to condemn it, angering the Brahmins who decided to kill him. Jesus then supposedly fled to join a community of Buddhists from whom he learned Pali, the language of Theravada Buddhism, and mastered their Buddhist texts. He next visited Persia and preached to the Zoroastrians there. Finally, as a 29-year-old armed with the sacred knowledge of the East, Jesus supposedly returned to Palestine and began his public ministry. The narrative concludes by summarizing his words and deeds and giving a brief account of his death. The story of his life was then allegedly taken by Jewish merchants back to India, where those who had known Isa as a young man realized that it was the same person. They supposedly then wrote down the full account. The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ was published as a historically factual account, though it sounded like a mediocre fictional novel and was widely believed as providing the key to the questions that people had long asked about the supposedly lost years of Jesus. It was not long, however, before scholars interested in historical facts began to question the account and to expose it as a complex hoax. The tale was taken on by no less eminent an authority than Max Muller, the greatest European scholar of Indian culture of the late 19th century, who showed that the tale of the discovery of the book and the stories it told were filled with insurmountable implausibilities. Questions arose why it is not found in either of the comprehensive catalogues of Tibetan literature if it was a favorite of the monastery of Hermes, how the Jewish merchants who went to India with tales of Jesus happened to meet up with precisely the Brahmins who knew Issa as a young man out of the millions of people in India, and how Issa's former associates in India realized exactly that the crucified man was their former student. In 1894, an English woman who had read Notovitch's book visited the Hermes monastery and made inquiries and learned that no Russian had ever been there, that no one had been nursed back to health after breaking his leg, and they had no books describing the life of Issa. In 1895, a scholar, J. Archibald Douglas, went and interviewed the abbot himself, who informed him that there had been no European with a broken leg in the monastery during his 15 years in charge of the community. The abbot also said that he had been a Lama for 42 years and was well acquainted with Buddhist literature. Not only did he never read aloud a book about Issa to a European or to anyone else, he was certain that no such book as The Unknown Life existed in Tibet. Further internal implausibilities and inaccuracies of the stories were exposed by both Goodspeed and Beskow. Today, not one recognized scholar on the planet has any doubts about the matter. The entire story was invented by Notovich, who earned a good deal of money and a substantial amount of notoriety for his hoax. The exposure has done little to stop lay people from believing them. Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.